Hey everyone, this is Attorney Andre. Now, a while ago, I made a video about the decision of a Delaware court rescinding about $55 billion from Tesla, which is about 303,960,630 shares, and giving them back to the general shareholders. Now, the lawyers in this case, they want to get their attorney's fees, but they don't want cash. They want the equivalent of Tesla shares, which comes out to roughly $6 billion of Tesla stock, plus $1.2 million in hard costs, so money that they actually spent. What's $6 billion of Tesla shares? That comes out to roughly 29,402,900 shares, roughly, give or take. You can check my math on that. Now, you might be saying, look at these sleazy lawyers. They want to take $6 billion. It's so much money. But look at what they worked. They worked on contingency. They worked on a percent, which means that for the past 5 years that this case was going, plus the appeal that hasn't even started yet or has been filed, which is probably going to take a year and a half, these lawyers are working for free. And they're putting money out of their own pocket. And they're up against Tesla and probably some of the best lawyers and the most expensive lawyers money can buy. So they're spending about $1 million. They're not making any money in attorney's fees on the hopes that they run the risk that if they win, they get a percent of that. This is called contingency. Now, how does contingency work? Let's take it on a very basic level, right? Somebody slips and falls, and the lawyer sends a demand letter. That lawyer sends a demand letter and says, you know what, you don't have to pay me for my time. You don't have to pay me for my effort. You don't have to pay me for the expense. You don't have to pay my staff. You don't have to pay anything. But if I'm going to do this, I want a percent of what you make, because you only made it because I helped you. Now, if you don't make it, if you don't make anything, I get zero and I spend all my money. But if I do help you, then I get, a percent, 40%, 30%, something like that. In Florida and in other states, it's 33% before trial, 40% maximum after trial, and that's capped at different intervals, like over $1 million or under $1 million. And then there's a 5% you add if it goes to appeal. And that's typically how that works. Now let's take a look at the Tesla case and see if $6 billion worth of shares is really that much. Because I'm going to tell you, I don't think it is. I think they could have asked for actually more. Because if you take a look at it, if these lawyers got back $55 billion worth in equivalent shares, and you look at what 33% is, so I'm not talking about the 40% of going to litigation, because remember, they went to litigation, they had their trial, they did everything. 5 years of litigation. Even more, actually, 6 years, I believe. But if you take 33%, that's of 55 billion, that is what? Roughly $15 billion, give or take? So instead of $15 billion in equivalent to shares, these lawyers are asking for the equivalent of $6 billion. Now, $6 billion, if you take a look and you do 6 billion divided by 55 billion, you get 10.9, so 11%. So these lawyers aren't taking 40%, they're not taking 33%, they're not taking 20%, they're not taking 15%, they're taking roughly 11%, barely into the double digits. And that's why they told the judge in their most recent filing, by the way, I'm going to put their filing in a description so you can read it, it's about 45 pages, but they told the judge in their recent filing that it's a reasonable amount and they want all of it. And between you and me, I think they're going to win. I think that courts routinely, because it's standard practice for lawyers to ask for 33%, for 40%, asking for essentially 10.9, 11%, that seems super reasonable, especially considering that for the past 5 or 6 years, these lawyers were going up against the best lawyers you can have in the nation and winning. Now, don't also forget that there's an appeal. Tesla filed an appeal, and if Tesla wins that appeal, then again, these lawyers get nothing. So these lawyers took a case from the beginning, didn't get paid, invested $1 million, took a case through summary judgment, took a case through appeal, took a case through everything, and at the end of it, they're like, look, we want our costs, because this is how much money we spent out of pocket, and we want 10.9%. I think that's more than fair. And again, if they lose on the appeal, they get nothing, and they don't even get reimbursed. So they spent $1.2 million for nothing. And they all lost. And it's not only $1.2 million, it's also $1.2 million in cost, plus the time of the attorneys that they can't recoup back. So they can't recoup back anything. They probably spent a couple of $1,000,000 just in attorney's fees and costs, if we add it all together. So here's what I think. Genuinely, and I said this in my other video, I think Tesla should have won. I don't know what the appellate court is going to do, but if the appellate court agrees with my analysis, Tesla is going to win on the appeal. But since they didn't win on the appeal yet, and since they lost in the lower tribunal, the trial court, I think it's fair and I think it's justifiable for Tesla's for the plaintiff's lawyers to ask Tesla to pay what's the equivalent of $6 billion. I think 10.9% is nothing compared to what they were able to recover. They recovered roughly $55 billion for the shareholders, and they want a very small percent of that. I think it's fair. I think it's justified. Let me know what you think. Did the article shock you? What do you think that's fair? Do you think it's even fair for lawyers to work on contingency, or do you think all lawyers should just work on hourly wages? Let me know what you think. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Talk to you later.